I'm sorry if this seems incoherent. It's just the smell. Where should I start? Sophomore year of high school, I guess. The year was 1997. That dumb bop song was on the radio, and I was mooning over Mallory Winters in biology. I figured she'd never even notice me. I was that girl who sat in the very back row in braces and skirts that were outdated before they ever left the Kmart. Mallory? She was a vision straight off television in her tie and tights, the first freshman at Truman High to ever be crowned homecoming queen. I didn't even make homecoming peasant. Nobody asked me to go. And, there was that part too. It's still pretty wild for kids in high school to come out and say they're gay. But when the internet was still mostly just Usenet boards and relay chat, no way. So I sat in the back of class and took my notes and watched Mallory take hers, and kept my head down when people teased me for working on the school newspaper. And then, one day, her name came up for a newspaper featurette. The Truman Standard had this thing we did every month where we'd interview a notable athlete or two. Football, basketball, cheerleading, you get the idea. It was... Sorry, I think I'm going to be sick. Where was I? Mallory. The school paper. Right. I was the one who ended up interviewing her. And if I wasn't sitting exactly where I am now, I couldn't say. I wouldn't forget that interview if I reached 90. I know for certain I'll remember it until I die. There's that much. Those interviews could get pretty nutty sometimes. In my freshman year, I found out one of the girls on the volleyball team was pregnant before she'd even told her parents. Then she made me promise not to publish the article. I didn't. Her boyfriend was a quarterback, and if he didn't mess me up, I knew he'd have friends who would. Mallory didn't have any kind of drama or dirt to drag up, though. She had 3.8 GPA marred only by algebra, church on Sundays, and Chris Isaac on her stereo. She was the perfect 1990s image of what a small-town homecoming queen should be. And then I got to the question that told me she was so much more than the image we had of her at school. So, I said, trying to sound cool or at least not like a love-struck freak. When you're not at Cannon's games turning cartwheels, what do you do for fun? Her mouth turned up at the corners in this grin that totally gutted me. They just give you a list of questions to read, don't they? I looked down at my paper and bit my tongue really hard so I wouldn't cry when I said yes. She let out this very low chuckle, and you could have melted me like frosting on a hot day. I thought so, she told me. That had Miss Anderson written all over it. The chuckle died out, but the grin stayed. I like to read, she said, and I study floriography. You study what? Floriography, she repeated. The language of flowers. I must have been staring, because she started laughing. You've never heard of it. It's a super old hobby, from the 1800s. I haven't, I confessed. And then I asked her to repeat herself because I was pretty sure I'd heard her wrong. But no, she'd really said, I could tell you about it if you want to come over this weekend. And she was really giving me her phone number when I stammered out that I didn't have a ride. And that weekend, she was really picking me up. Mallory's family lived way out in the country, as only people who are completely loaded can do. They had a tennis court, swimming pool, greenhouse, gravel drive. I never did figure out why Mallory was in a public school, but for a very long time, I considered it my gain. We walked around the greenhouse and she told me about the different flowers in it, what orchids meant, as well as delphiniums and hyacinths. At one point, she asked me for my favorite flower. I was too embarrassed to tell her I didn't have one, especially in a greenhouse full of all these exotic things that would never grow in my backyard, so I picked one at random. White roses. She gave me this big smile, said innocence, and just sort of left it at that until she dropped me back off at my house. Beforehand, she tucked this white flower into my hair and said, "We should do this again sometime." That was it. You could have knocked me over with the flower in my hair. It didn't look much like any white rose I'd ever seen before. Sort of a cup, instead of one of those big frou-frou skirt-looking things from the grocery store. But it did smell like a rose, and I put it in a glass of water on my dresser before going to bed. I'm sorry. I have to speed this up. It's that smell. It's so strong in here. You probably know where this went from there. There was another visit, then a kiss. We couldn't tell anybody, not out in the boonies in 1998, which is why I had to keep things secret when the phone calls started. At 10, 11 o'clock at night, she'd be asking me if I was at home, who was with me, what I was doing. She'd leave flowers in my locker, always those same wild white roses from home, and ask me over lunch about the girls in the changing room during gym. And then came the mandatory swim unit in January. Mallory kicked me in the head while I was underwater, and when I woke up, I did so in hospital. They pulled me out of the pool after I didn't resurface. My mom asked if I wanted her to call Mallory, because we were so close. I spilled everything. I told my mother I hadn't known what to do, with another girl so much more popular, so influential, acting so interested in me. I told her about the argument right before we got in the pool, and I told her something else, something I wasn't proud of then, something I'm not proud of now. I told her I was pretty sure it wasn't an accident. Stories like this usually end with one of the parties dead or arrested or in a mental ward somewhere. This one doesn't. Mallory just disappeared, didn't show up to school the following Monday. Her parents swore they'd dropped her off at the doors. Her picture was on TV. The police were looking for her. She couldn't possibly have just vanished. And yet, somehow she had. I was sure someone would kill me for driving out their it-girl darling. But that didn't happen either. People didn't talk to me as much. But nobody tried to drown me in a toilet, or get me expelled for having a pack of cigarettes in my locker. It was weird, even weirder than her disappearance. But I kept telling myself it'd get better. About 3 weeks before the end of term, I opened my locker and started screaming. I wasn't the only one either, once everyone saw what had spilled out. There were hundreds, maybe even 1,000 white roses crammed in there, all fresh. They tumbled over my sweater and skirt, buried my shoes, and unearthed a neatly folded pile of clothes atop a pair of dress shoes, completely unlike my faded sneakers. Blouse, tights, skirt, tie. A teacher came running at the sound of screams. That teacher got another teacher who got the principal. Finally, someone lifted the blouse out of my locker, looking for a name tag in the collar. Then we saw the black Sharpie letters written across the front. "White roses," they said. "Innocence, sympathy, purity." The principal turned the shirt just as everyone's eyes turned to me, and so I was the first one, other than Mr. Danvers at least, who saw the words across the back. "Your flowers lie, Jessie." Sorry. I know I keep interrupting, But floral smells really get to me these days, and I swear it's worse when I remember how that locker smelled for the entire rest of term. Where was I? End of term. I transferred out, and do you blame me? In those pre-Columbine days, it was easy to sneak in and out. But where was she for all those weeks between winter breakup and the end of May? I should have come clean long before her threats turned near fatal. But would it have made any difference? That was almost 20 years ago. I moved across the country for college, and there I stayed. About 6 years ago, I met a woman named Rachel, who didn't care a whit for flowers but loved to cook. Our friends called it a fairy tale romance. She only brought me flowers once, a dozen roses for our first Valentine's Day, and never again. That was when I came clean about Mallory and the mystery flowers in my locker, the year I spent with a girlfriend intent on possessing me, who probably saw an easy target in a girl too boring to be bullied. Last year, we got married, and we all said hooray for happy endings. Our anniversary is today, so you might be wondering why I'm typing this alone in a cheap hotel room. It's a very simple answer. I got home last night, and Rachel was gone. No signs of forced entry. Dinner in the oven. Her shoes and jacket still in the front hall. But there was also a bouquet of a dozen white roses in the middle of the table. So I turned off the oven, grabbed an overnight bag, and ran. I don't know how Mallory found us after all this time, and I don't know where Rachel is. I hope she's dead. Is that terrible? I have this awful feeling that for Rachel, being dead is going to be better. It's the hotel room, you see. I laid down for a nap when I got here, exhausted from adrenaline on top of a long workday. According to my phone, I was out for about 40 minutes. A call to the front desk proved I'm the only one with a key card. Nobody else has been up here. But the room is hip deep in white roses,